Nothing could ever happen to us. Nothing could ever happen to our technology. And the cycles which are repeated endlessly throughout ancient texts and in scars on our planet are just the tales of people with imaginations, only capable of filling our history with wild stories, leaving no room in their minds to exhaust a single thought towards making life easier. For if they were allowed to accelerate, it must fit a different tale, a tale told by the only ones who have ever been able to create for efficiency. For only we have the capabilities to advance and evolve beyond the stories that we have designed for them. The mainstream narrative around our past has been constantly asserting that in order to understand the way our ancestors lived, we must step away and stop looking through modern eyes. In fact, it is the explorations of modern technologies and the different means of acquiring them which will likely unlock the mysteries we wish to solve. For their story contains no thought process, no engineers, no biologists, and no inventors of any kind. If an object is found, it is pushed aside, if not with simple explanation. Nothing led up to it, and nothing come of it. Just mindless drones, sweating and moaning, while dragging 1,000-ton blocks with simple means. Simple ideas for a simple people. Yet there is an ever-growing community who, through researching what our ancestors have left behind, have come to the conclusion that what has to be ignored is exactly what this creative narrative cannot let go of, and that is the assumption of what is technologically advanced and what is primitive.
Blades or saws have dipped into the material and then backed out, and cuts have been adjusted. I can only describe this block as having been machined. It's very flat. Its corners and angles are very precise, and there are power tool markings all over it that seem almost delicate in their application.
As stated verbatim in previous videos, our needs and wants do not change. These were and always will be necessary, and no amount of repeated jargon can remove these requirements, nor can it remove the drive that lives within all of us. This unrelenting desire to acquire them easily and through better means. For we make our lives easier through ideas, the development of those ideas, and we innovate until our desired goal is reached. So how many ways and levels can something be improved upon? And what if the only things that have ever changed from our past to our present be the systems of delivery we create to meet our demands? The endless theories seem acceptable when we consider simple technologies. But why do we continue to assume the human mind in the past is so disconnected from our own that they would cease to evolve an idea past its earliest stage? Should we not assume that the destination of every civilization be improvement. Take, for instance, the obstacle of acquiring clean water is utilizing billions of kilojoules in human power, the energy spent on the creation of materials, then laying out tens of thousands of kilometers of piping, the most productive method we can think of. Are there better ways? As we explore these ways, could we end up simplifying with newer inventions to the extent where we've arrived so close to our natural world that the majority of our current technological existence is no longer recognized? Are we to assume the concept of engineering to be lost in the past? Or have we been lost in the narrative? In our search to unlock what has happened in the past, perhaps our greatest achievement will be the eventual understanding of how to pry open the doors which we've closed around ourselves. Our technologies are available to us because our current environment allows it. If this environment were any different, we would have to alter our technologies and the systems that drive them in order to continue some semblance of our lax way of life. We take for granted the pleasant and calm planet which we lay our feet on, with its balmy beaches, powdered mountains, and rich soils. However, when it does come to natural disasters, is what we experience the worst that could ever occur? But what could possibly happen? What if we were around when the Rockies were created, when the last eruption of a supervolcano erupted, or when Pangaea began to separate? What would we have done then? And what would be left of what we once had, as we scavenged through all that was left in our effort to survive? Would the rubble of our once great monuments become areas of pilgrimage for worship and be designated as sacred? Were there other events in the past which would have affected our ability to advance towards the types of scientific feats we have today? Why do so many of us believe that the silent and calm ball we live on today will remain that way forever?
And of course, we've seen from some of the ice core graphs that, yeah, there were really huge, severe swings in climate that brought the ice age to an end. But what's missing from that is, obviously, does the climate just do that on its own? Or is there something that is driving that, you see? And if there is something that's driving it, if it's not just some intrinsic mechanism within the climate itself, which we have obviously not identified, right? Then if that was the case, then that mechanism must still be something that's there as a potential, or it was something from the cosmic domain, but we're looking at something that's a little more complex than just one big rock slamming into the earth and that's it.
So what if things were different? What if our moon wasn't present? Or our days were shorter or longer, the air thinner, the sun barely visible for years at a time, or its rays becoming unbearable, forcing anyone to be wary of venturing outside?
Had a very well-developed society before the end of the last ice age, about 10,000 BC, but all the geological evidence, I'm a geologist, indicates that the Ice Age ended very abruptly. Yeah. We're now piecing together that there were major solar outbursts, catastrophic changes on Earth. This wiped out these early civilizations, essentially set humanity back into a dark age for thousands of years before civilization reemerged. And I don't want to be a scaremonger, but we are now finding that this could happen again. A truism of geology is if it happened in the past, it could happen again in the future.
How would that affect our lives? Which innovations would be able to carry on? What new ones would be introduced? And what would be of their final evolution? And would the creations which we lost resemble what we see dotted over the ancient landscape? There are stories in our past of these types of environments. The environment is key to understanding what technologies would have been available to those living before, after, and during these times. Religion, for a long time, had preached that the development of science was sin. This would have had an impact on the ability of societies to acquire what they needed through advancing certain methods. The majority of the world's religions also shared similarities around this belief. How were they all able to reach that conclusion? Doesn't a belief stem from what happens around us? So how did the entire world come to the conclusion that science was bad? What could have happened to birth the same idea over the entire planet? Does this imply the past was once connected worldwide? Doesn't it also imply that they once dealt with advanced science? And doesn't it seem more probable that something happened within this field which attributed to their final decision? With the population growing rapidly, the necessity to have what we need be easier and more widespread is acquiring us to move at a faster pace. As with any design, errors can develop and accidents occur. So if we were to view these constructions as being utilized as a technological source, what would an industrial accident of this scale look like? Are there signs left of these mishaps? And are we able to arrive at a conclusion of what their purpose was by the damage caused? Our focus on electricity is so great that we seek out other power sources in order to transfer their energy into the same power. Those such as solar, wind, and tidal are also used to generate the same energy. Everything we do and create revolves around our dependence of devices that cannot exist without it. So what would this world look like if we couldn't use electricity, or use it in the way we do presently? What would we be missing? Are there other ways to communicate, to travel, and still live a cutting-edge lifestyle? And if so, what would these technologies look like? How would they evolve? And what could they open up for the future? The steam-powered locomotive to today's magnetic rails are just some of the different sources we have utilized in order to make our need to communicate and our want to explore simpler. If something were to occur where we in our current state were wiped of our memory, would the drive to simplify our lives be what will lead our future generations to arrive at the same point we are now, and perhaps even further? As we venture to improve our existence, will the final leg of our technological journey be one where it is indistinguishable from our past? These structures are something more than the mere monuments and burial places we have been brought up to believe in. From their precision, massive size, layout, and location, there seems likely to be a purpose for which they were created that we have only scratched the surface of. Perhaps it will be seen one day that these civilizations were in the latter stages of their technologies, and it may only be realized when we arrive at ours.